Invocation. Sahana bhavantu, sahana bhunaktu, sahavidyam karavavahai, tejasvinavadidamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namah Shivaya, and welcome to our meditation today. So, for the past 3 days, we've been really delving into the concept of the kleshas, these blocks, these hindrances that keep us from yoga. So, we covered avidya, misknowing, asmita, egoism, raga, attachment to pleasure, and today we get to devasya. Devasya is interpreted here as hatred. And it is that, but we have to remember that in a sutra, the first word sometimes is the seed, and then everything kind of builds on top of it. I kind of talked about it last time, like a wedding cake with the first tier, and then there's tiers that keep going up. So devasya is actually the flip side of raga. Yesterday we talked about the attachment to pleasure, but devasya, even though it's interpreted as hate, it could be interpreted more as the attachment to negative emotions, things that make you unhappy, that don't please you. And we see people, we know people who exist to be angry. They thrive on conflict. They thrive on kind of constantly having an adversarial relationship with others. And it ends up that it festers up into a hatred of others because that's where it finally has to go to. It has to kind of hit that crescendo, and they get a high off of it. They get high off of it the same way that the person that is attached to pleasure gets high off of it. I talked a little bit yesterday about how that yoga philosophy doesn't always match up with modern Western psychology. That they can run parallel, but they're not the same. They're not the same ideas. And so here, Patanjali is telling you that these attachments to pleasure and hatred, you're born with them. All right, so follow me. Because of the tradition of yoga and the belief of karma and the belief of incarnation, your past lives have already planted these seeds of these kleshas that you have to deal with. So we all come to this body with these kleshas. Yoga helps us to wake up and realize that they're there and observe them, become the witness to them, and eliminate them, to end them. So a lot of times in Western sociology and Western psychology, we talk about that hatred is taught. So here we have a little bit of that, a conflict of ideas. In yoga, it's that we're taught that hatred is already there, that the ability to hate is already there. In reality, in Western sociology and psychology, what is taught in hatred is the verbiage or the language of the attacking the object that you hate or the person that you hate. That is not there at birth that's learned. But the idea of having something that you hate is only the flip side of something that gives you pleasure. And those in yoga, those come, that coin comes at birth, right? So the coin has heads and tails. And it's actually, you have to have those two things, because if you don't experience pleasure, how do you know what displeasure or hatred is? If you don't experience that idea of dislike or hatred, you don't understand pleasure. And then you're given these two extremes of emotions, and then yoga says find the middle where you're the witness to them. They exist. And by becoming the witness to them, you eliminate the attachment to the highs and the lows, the extremes, the pleasure, the hatred, the love, and without any kind of understanding of where it's going to go, to the idea that you dislike and hate, right? So we've all experienced this. We've experienced it with with partners when we were young, and in high school we fall in love and we think that it's the relationship that's going to last forever, and then something happens in the relationship, and then within 6 or 8 months you hate that person, you can't stand them, you don't want to be around them. So this is that idea of experiencing the height of the mountain and the lowest part of the valley. And yoga's asking you to experience the middle, not the highs and the lows anymore. And yet, in this kind of idea of pop psychology, we constantly talk about love and like how that everything is love. Nikaroli Baba, who was Ram Dass's teacher, Bhagavan Dass's teacher, Krishna Dass's teacher, he talked about something, love, but in a different way. He spoke of it with the word unconditional love, right? The experience of unconditional love, meaning I love you no matter what. I love you no matter if I'm experiencing something that displeases me with you. I love you whether you're experiencing pleasure. It's a kind of love that goes across the board for everything and everyone. So that idea of unconditional love in yoga is what we should be experiencing. Love without attachments. I don't expect anything from you, and I'm not expected to give anything. It's love that's universal. So that's really what we're talking about in yoga. So when we talk about the idea of hatred, and when we talk about hatred, hatred keeps us from experiencing that unconditional love. Because of our prejudice, our preference, our likes, our dislikes. And some of this can absolutely be cultural. Like, you can train somebody to hate, but the seed, the emotion of hate is already there. You can also, train a child to not see objects of hate. But maybe they'll end up hating math on their own, right? So you can train a child that, there's no difference in race, there's no difference in gender, there's no difference in religion. And when we talk about hate, those are the kind of things we think about. But then they go to their math class and they hate math, and that comes up naturally. You didn't teach them, oh, well, English is the same as math and science. they naturally bring up that dislike, that disdain for an object or a subject or a thing. So it's within us. So that keeps us from experiencing that universal idea of yoga, that oneness of being, that idea that everything is equal. And we have to experience these two extremes. Like I said, we have to experience them to find the middle ground. Um, when I say eliminate, a lot of times we'll say things like healing, healing the emotions in yoga. Here again, this is kind of pop psychology. But to heal something is to eliminate it, to evacuate it. Um, if you have cancer, um, the doctor first tells you if they're able to do something medically, they'll say the cancer is in remission, meaning that there's a possibility the cancer is still there. The cancer could come back. We're not going to tell you that you're healed of the cancer. My mother purchased me an insurance policy with a big insurance company. It was only a cancer-based insurance. Even though I didn't have cancer, her husband died of cancer, so she got worried about her two children, and she bought us both these policies. And the policy was that that if I had some kind of cancer, that if they were able to get it to a point of remission, that there was I think 7-year period that the insurance company said it's in remission, right? It was 12 years later that if there was no cancer that returned, that the insurance company said that you were healed of cancer, that whatever actions that were taken to try to cure it had actually worked. So there was this long observation of seeing if the seed had been eliminated or removed, and it wasn't going to come back. So when we use the word heal, healing is an elimination of. It's a getting rid of completely. It's totally detached completely. So as we think about both this concept of attachment to pleasure, attachment to pain, hatred, and suffering, know that we have to experience both of them. That's part of being in the body and having the mind, having the emotions, and having the thoughts. You have them as kind of a laboratory, so that you check into the body, the soul does, and you have these experiences, and you maybe have them lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And then finally, the jiva, the soul, says, I don't want to experience this anymore. I'm exhausted. This idea of experiencing the highs and the lows, and the roller coaster ride. I'm kind of done with the roller coaster. I want to get off the roller coaster. And this is where you become the seeker. You start to seek yoga. When you start to see the truth, you become the seer, right? You see the truth. So we do have to experience these kleshas. And that's probably the hardest thing within this philosophy, is to accept that you're born with these two extremes. That you don't come into the world pure. Like, in Christianity, the baby comes into the world pure without any sin, and then they start creating sin. or they do things that create sin. Here, you come into the world already with the karmic seeds from past lives. So it's a different concept, a different idea. And that is what that seed of both attachment to pleasure, attachment to pain, attachment to the ego, attachment to the misidentification to who you are. It's all from past lives. The first step for the seeker, and I go back to it each time, is the meditation practice to become the witness. You know, calm the mind, calm the emotion, calm the thoughts, so that you can, as the seeker, become the seer. So, taking a moment, establishing your seat, sit up tall, and close the eyes. And focus the mind, drawing the senses inward. Allow the breath to deepen. Inhale deeply. And exhale fully. You don't have to force the breath. You don't have to have a restriction or a block at the back of the throat as in ujjayi. I just want you to really experience the breath fully. So in the yoga practice, the breath is also seen as the divine energy that gives you life. We all come into the world, we take a breath, and then when we leave the body, we exhale. The breath becomes the commonality amongst us all. It is the divine life force in the body. So enjoy it. Investigate it. Allow it to really fill you completely. Inhale deeply. Exhale fully. And to help the mind stay focused, as you inhale, silently say to yourself, I. And as you exhale, silently say to yourself, am. Inhaling I, and exhaling am. And nothing comes after am, expressing infinity, eternal, everlasting. A detachment from the body, from the mind, from the thoughts, from the emotions. Inhale deeply. Exhale fully. Silently tell yourself, I am not this body. Silently tell yourself, I am not this mind. Silently tell yourself, I am not these thoughts. Silently tell yourself, I am not these emotions. Tell yourself you are an infinity, eternal and everlasting. Inhale for the sound of Om. Bringing the hands together, rubbing the hands together, building heat within the hands. Bring the hands, place them over the eyes, let the heat from the hands be absorbed into the eyes. Gently open the eyes, bring the hands across the forehead, the top of the head, the back of the neck. Then bring the hands together in prayer, bow down to the teachers and the teachings of yoga from the past, the present, those that are still yet to be revealed. Om Bolo Sadguru Bhagavan Ki Jai. Namaste. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we will finish up the last klesha tomorrow and we put them all together.